So this is the second video that I'm recording today, and this video is actually going to be split into two videos. And we have a thunderstorm warning. It's getting very overcast outside, so I'm going to try to do this quickly. Hi, my name is Azaria. I am a doctoral student for some reason. I'm also a creative writer, and I live in Nebraska. Yeah, yep. Trying to get out of here. They won't let me leave. I'm going to actually be reading off of my laptop for a considerable amount of this video, just because it will make things easier. I won't sort of have to come up with things on the fly, and I just hope that it'll make the recording and viewing experience better. I haven't decided if I'm going to leave the name of my press and the names of the people that I am talking about in this video. I am going to say them in this recording, but I might just blank them out in the actual video. So this is just forewarning, I haven't decided yet. In 2023, press, which stands for, acquired my chapbook. The chapbook was originally titled Heard Through the Walls at Nana's. My experience with this press has been absolutely awful. It is not as bad as it could be. I'm so sure that things could be much, much worse than they are, but the experience just has not been great at all. There were several red flags throughout the entire process, and I will tell you about each and every one of them. I'm going to call myself out first because I readily ignored every red flag until I got to the last one, just because I really wanted to put this chapbook out. I really wanted to have my name on a work like this, and I just really believed in the chapbook. Unfortunately, at this point, just because of everything that I've had to go through with the press, I am completely disillusioned and disconnected from the chapbook. I hardly remember writing it. I hardly remember the substance of it, and that's because I'm completely disconnected from it. In this video, I will show you my emails. I will show you my publishing agreement. Everything that I'm saying, I will back up for sure. I'm definitely not trying to expose this press. I'm not trying to expose them per se. It's more so that I want you to learn from my experience. It can be really exciting when someone takes an interest in your work, and that can lead to you being really overzealous and overlooking red flags and making the wrong decisions. So on August 15th, 2023, I submitted my chapbook to the chapbook series contest. Essentially, if you were the winner of the contest, then you would get like a small monetary prize, and then you would get a certain amount of chapbooks for free, and then they would sell your chapbook for a certain amount of time. So I submitted my chapbook at the time titled Heard Through the Wall at Nana's, or Walls at Nana's, and it was just it's just a chapbook that's sort of based on these conversations that I would overhear as a child, often about things that I did not understand. I wrote these pieces, many of them separately at different times, and then I just sort of put them together and edited them so that they all seemed like they were part of the same family, and so that several of them seemed like they were happening in the same house. On November 19th, 2023, I was contacted by a woman named who is the managing editor of the press, and she told me that they were really interested in my chapbook and they wanted to acquire it, even though I didn't win the competition. I was extremely happy about this. I was like, hell yeah, girl, take that chapbook. Take it, put it out. I would love to see it in print. On November 22nd, 2023, sent me the publishing agreement that I will put here for you. According to it's a pretty standard publishing agreement. There's nothing in there that was outlandish. I'm not expecting this chapbook to sell anything. I'm expecting this chapbook to go double cardboard. And so I wasn't really worried about royalties or in advance, which I don't get in advance at all. On November 25th, I signed the contract. I did read through the entire agreement, but I just went ahead and signed it on November 25th. From November 27th to the 29th of 2023, and I were having an email back and forth about the title of the chapbook. And this conversation was red flag number one. Now, I'll be the first to say that I don't necessarily think that Heard Through the Walls at Nana's is a great title. I think that there could be some tweaks to that title. And I do think that the title that we ended up settling on is a better title. But with that being said, I just did not like the candor of this conversation. So she was proposing a few titles that just didn't fit my vision for the book, that didn't fit the themes of the book, or even like what the book was about. And whenever I tell other people about this long email conversation that we had, I mentioned to them that she was sort of cherry picking lines from stories. And then I personally didn't feel like those lines would be representative of the entire chapbook. I'll also be the first to say that my suggestions for titles were not good. They weren't good. Like, I think one of the titles I suggested was like bargains and something. And I was just like, after I sent it, I was like, girl, what the hell are you talking about? But as I said before, a lot of her titles were also just, they either weren't good or they just weren't what I was looking for. This correspondence began to feel passive aggressive after a while, and I know that there's a point in the conversation where I apologize because I'm not trying to seem difficult. She says like, oh no, like you don't seem difficult at all. Looking back at it, and even in the moment, I just felt that she was being passive aggressive about everything. And at the time, I was also just really close to the chapbook, right? I had sort of just finished it, and I was just really inexperienced. And so I wasn't using the fact that I felt like I picked up on some passive aggressiveness against her at all, in the slightest. So I ended up agreeing on a title, and the title was The Smiths of 115th Street. So the chapbook is about a family called the Smiths, and they live on 115th. So I thought that that was fine. I didn't love that title, and at the time I liked my title better than that title, but now, you know, I'm disconnected from it now, but it's a fine title, and it is indicative of the content of the book. November 30th is when they put the announcement up on their Facebook page, and my chapbook is listed amongst the finalists, and all the finalists are having their chapbooks published. December 1st, 2023 was when the second red flag came. On that day, I unsubscribed from their newsletter. They sent so many emails. It felt like they were sending more emails than I would ever get from any other sort of press or publisher newsletter that I would sign up for. And so I unsubscribed from the newsletter, and I didn't remember ever signing up for the newsletter. So when it asked me my sort of reason for unsubscribing, I said that I'd never signed up for it. Very quickly after I unsubscribed from the newsletter, I get a very long-winded email along with a screenshot from an editorial assistant. The email essentially said that, like, yes, you did sign up for this newsletter. We automatically sign you up when you submit something. Please don't put the wrong reasons for unsubscribing from a newsletter because we get dinged for that. And then I want to say that, like, there was an ask in there, like they were asking something of me or asking me something, and I just didn't respond to it because I just didn't know how to. I checked back, and the assistant, so it isn't an editorial assistant, it's just an assistant, but the assistant was asking me if there was something that had offended me about the most recent newsletter, because she said that I had been opening the newsletters prior to that, but I'm actually going to show you all the newsletters that I received prior to unsubscribing. I think I only opened a handful of them, and I am 100% sure that I was either looking for news about who had won the chapbook contest, or I was looking for the chapbook announcement after touched base with me about the fact that they wanted to publish my chapbook. So I was quite literally never looking at the newsletter for whatever news they were trying to bring to me. I was specifically looking for news and information about the chapbook. I definitely get where they're coming from. I used to run a volunteer newsletter when I worked at a nonprofit, and I understand, but I just think that the email was absolutely unnecessary and unprofessional. In retrospect, it is very clear to me that this email came from herself, and I will tell you why I know that for a fact. On December 8th, I get an email from an editorial assistant just introducing herself to me, telling me that she'll have edits for me soon and that we'll be working together. I never heard from that editorial assistant again. January 5th, 2024 is when the next red flag came. Like I said, there's a thunderstorm warning outside, and I just lost all the lights. So now I have my ring light on. Hopefully the difference is not too crazy. So January 5th, 2024 was a deadline for the manuscript submission. Essentially what was looking for me to do was to just send her the manuscript again. So the same manuscript that I had submitted to the contest. And the reason that she asked for this in the contract was because she was expecting that I would make some changes to the manuscript between submitting it to the contest and then like January 5th, essentially. I did not make any changes to it. And I didn't know that this was the purpose of this deadline. I thought that this deadline was for me giving them the manuscript after they gave me edits, so like editorial notes for it, because of the editorial assistant that had introduced herself to me about a month before this. But emailed me at about 5:20, 5:30 on January 5th, 2024 to tell me you missed the deadline. So I sent it over the same day, and I clarified that I was expecting edits before I would submit the manuscript by this deadline. This was absolutely my error, 100%. But once again, the email is a little passive aggressive to me. Like, instead of saying, hey, Azaria, today is a deadline for you to submit the manuscript to me, she just copied the portion out of the contract and said something like, I'm just checking on this. And I show you the email, so I'm sure you can see that. And that was another red flag to me, because I don't know. I just think that she could have worded it differently. On January 13th, 2024, I reached out to schedule a reading during the AWP conference. And I don't know if you guys know, but AWP is the Association of Writers and Writing Programs. And they do lots of sort of online events. They have a lot of resources, scholarships, stuff like that. And then every year, once a year, they have an in-person writing conference. Last year it was in Kansas City, and I went to that one. The year before it was in Seattle, Washington. I went to that one as well. And this year it's in Los Angeles, and I'm not going to that one. It's way too expensive, and I'm not getting on a plane. So she reached out to schedule that reading at the beginning of 2024, and I told her that I would be attending AWP, and I passed along the names of some managing editors that I knew at literary magazines, because she was interested in co-hosting the event along with another magazine or press. On February 3rd, 2024, so a little bit before the AWP conference, emailed me to invite me to another offsite event that he was going to be present at. I don't remember if they were hosting the event. I'll put the email here. That was sort of went off without a hitch. I wasn't interested in that offsite event, and I didn't end up going to it. I always get really overwhelmed at conferences and stuff like this, and thankfully I went with my friend this time, but I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that. On February 7th, we had our reading during the AWP conference. And this was the fourth red flag. So while at AWP, like while in the sort of conference building, I think it was at like a convention center. So at the AWP conference, there is always a book fair where books are sold, but also people are just sort of giving information, right? Literary magazines are there, presses are there, stuff like that. This press had a table, and I stopped by the table with the intention of meeting Peg in person for the first time. She wasn't at the table, but I tried to sort of start up a conversation with the person who was manning the table, just asking about the reading that was supposed to be that night, and they were just really rude. They made it very clear that they did not want to talk to me. And so I personally never take that personally. If someone doesn't want to talk to me, that's perfectly fine. Typically, I'm sort of making an effort, like sort of using a lot of energy to go out of my way to talk to people anyway. I'm not a very extroverted person. That was really fine, but I just didn't like how rude she was. So my friend that went to the conference with me, I ended up dragging him along to the reading as well. And we were both absolutely miserable the entire time. I was really excited to be there at first. No one else seemed excited to be there. I was sort of trying to ask around the people that had already arrived at the location, like, is there some sort of check-in that I need to do? Do we need to talk about how long we're reading for? No one had any information for me, and no one cared that I was there. No one asked for my name, nothing. No one sort of confirmed that I was present at the reading, none of that stuff. But when the reading began, they immediately called my name to read first. And I've done a lot of readings, and that just like doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. And I remember very vividly one of the readers for the magazine that was hosting the event was really, really obnoxious. He had a checkerboard blazer on and a top hat, and he had printed his story that he was reading, and apparently he was really accomplished. His bio had all kinds of publications in it, and as he was reading, when he would get to the end of a page, he would throw the paper over his shoulder and onto the floor. It wasn't funny, Like it wasn't edgy, it was just like obnoxious. When I did end up speaking to after the reading was over, I just wanted to introduce myself. Like I didn't want to have a long conversation or anything. I introduced myself. Hey, I'm Azaria. And she immediately pronounced my name wrong. Immediately. She's calling me Azaria. That's just kind of a theme throughout my life. My name is Hebrew, right? There's a version of my name in the Bible. It is spelled with an H at the end and it's pronounced Azariah. And it's a man's name in the Bible. But like my name, it's not, I don't know. It's it's only 6 letters. It's not crazy, especially if I'm telling you in your face how to pronounce it. And so she calls me Azaria, and then I go, oh, my name's Azaria. That's what I always say when people mispronounce my name. I don't make it a big deal. I just say, my name's Azaria. And she, and I'll reenact it for you. Oh, Azaria. My name's Azaria. Oh, literally. I also wanted to say that I always go into new situations like this with the best of intentions, with the intention to make it clear that I'm open to networking and to talking with people. I never sort of try to go into these situations being really silent and quiet. I try to make it clear that I'm happy to be there. And I did that upon getting to the venue, and no one else shared in that sort of optimism. No one else seemed happy to be there. Everyone seemed, I don't know, just really down. I'm not sure how to describe it. I think it could have been anxiety on the part of some of the readers, but on the part of the organizers, I don't know. I just don't understand why they were so demure, I guess is the word to use. And I think that I don't know. I just think that they could have done more to speak with the writers, speak with the people present at the event, or without whom the event would not be successful. She made it very clear that she did not care who I was or how my name is pronounced. The entire thing was very uninviting and boring. At the AWP offsite reading, it ended up talking to me very briefly about the editorial assistant that reached out to me in December of 2023. I asked I told that I remembered hearing from the editorial assistant and I was interested to see what edits that she had for me, and ended up telling me that the editorial assistant no longer worked for her, and she started to tell me why, and I asked her not to tell me why. I just didn't think that that was any of my business. I thought that that should have remained confidential between the editorial assistant and herself. The only correspondence that I had with the editorial assistant was when she introduced herself to me. I don't even think that I replied to that email, not because of some like uppity reason or something. I think I just honestly forgot to reply to that email. So that was also just really weird that she would want to talk to me about that, even though it's the first time that we were meeting and she couldn't pronounce my name. On February 13th, emails me about potentially scheduling a call, I believe to talk about edits. And I emailed her back, telling her sort of what my availability was and saying that I believe I said that I didn't want a phone call, but I would do like a Zoom meeting. I would be fine with that. It got back to me 10 days later on the 23rd of February and canceled the meeting because she wasn't feeling well. To be clear, we didn't end up scheduling a meeting. She just sort of said, let's meet some other time, basically. On April 9th, the SPD closed and left lots of literary magazines unpaid. And so SPD was the small press distribution company, and it would print and distribute books and magazines for a lot of smaller presses and literary magazines. And when they closed, lots of magazines had unpaid royalties that SPD was just not going to release. They just sort of shrugged and closed down. Because of the SPD closure, launched a crowdfunding campaign to fund the publication of the rest of the projects that they had acquired, and they reached their goal without any assistance from me. On June 28th, I realized that it had been a while since I had heard anything from or an editorial assistant of any kind. On June 28th, I ended up reaching out to 2 other writers who had chapbooks accepted as a finalist in the competition and were going to be published. I asked them through, I believe, just like the contact us form on their website, if they had heard anything from And of course, I introduced myself and told them who I was. One of them never got back to me, but one of them did get back to me. And he said that he hadn't heard a lot, and it was his understanding that publishing takes a long time anyway. And then he also said that he believed that had recently had a death in the family. I don't know how he learned about that. I'm assuming that I told him, but I don't want to assume that was having regular correspondence with this writer but not with me. I don't know if it was a one-off conversation. I don't know, but that's what I was told. On October 8th, 2024, so 4 months later, emails me and introduces me to a new editorial assistant, and she gives me 2 questionnaires that I need to fill out for the marketing and book cover design of the chapbook. So the book cover questionnaire is pretty straightforward, just sort of asking me what themes are present in the book, what colors would be representative of those themes, if I had any sort of artwork or style in mind, stuff like that. I filled that one out pretty quickly. The other questionnaire was a marketing questionnaire, and the purpose of that questionnaire was to sort of collect information about me and about the project in order to market it effectively. I had to write, I believe, 4 different versions of my bio. I had to write, I believe, 4 different versions of a blurb for the book. I had to pick out keywords. I had to pitch any events that I wanted the book to be sold at, any bookstores or schools and universities that I had connections to that might be interested in purchasing the chapbook, all kinds of stuff like that. But also they wanted to know if I was married, if I had children, what cities I had lived in before. Some of the information just seemed like overkill, and it just seemed like there was no reason for them to request this information from me, but I did give them all the information I could. I considered that red flag number 5. On November 18th, 2024, they reached out to me for my author photo, and I sent that. Later on, the editorial assistant reached out to me to ask me who to give credit for the photo. I took the photo, and I ended up telling her that, but I did think that it was weird that they didn't include that ask in the same email. Not a red flag necessarily, just like not a efficient way of corresponding. On November 25th, 2024, we went ahead and set up arrangements to meet over Zoom to talk about the edits to my chapbook. On December 5th, 2024, we had that meeting. It was the first time that I had met the editorial assistant, and first of all, mispronounced my name for the whole meeting, even though I reminded her in the meeting that my name is Azaria, and even though the editorial assistant was pronouncing my name correctly the entire time. Gave me deadlines to solicit blurbs from writers that I knew and to finish the edits and send the manuscript back. Also made it clear during this meeting that she wanted to push to get this chapbook released during February for Black History Month. It was already December of 2024, and she wanted the chapbook to be out in February to take advantage of Black History Month. That's the way she phrased it. I was fine with that. I understood the goal, right? I understand that presses are not just people that want to put out art. They have to put out products because they need to make money. But I don't know, it did make me feel a little icky, because I believe that I am one of, if not the only, Black writer to be published through this press. The edits were emailed to me. I was being very weird throughout the meeting about the edits. She kept saying, they're not a lot. It's like, okay, girl, send them, like, whatever. The edits were sent to me. A lot of them I agreed with. Some of them I did not agree with. And whenever I get edits from an editor that I don't agree with, I push back on them. I don't just say no, but I sort of give them my reasoning for why I'm pushing back and why I phrase things the way that I have in the writing. And so I ended up pushing back on, I believe, 3 or 4 edits. And the reason that I was pushing back on these edits was because it seemed like the editorial assistant didn't really understand the pieces. So she was asking me to edit things that were sort of instrumental to the conceptual nature of some of the pieces in the chapbook. I don't know if she was upset with me pushing back. I don't know, and I'll tell you why. On December 12th, I went ahead and delivered those edits to the editorial assistant. And whenever you're sent edits from someone, typically they use like the track changes thing. And so I just went through and sort of accepted all of the edits that I agreed with. If I disagreed with edits for any reason, then I would respond and list my reasoning. On December 16th, The editorial assistant reached back out to me, and I'm going to just read my document of what I have here, and asked me to put it in a Word doc with track changes on, which would require me to redo all of the edits, because you can't retrospectively turn on track changes and have it apply to the edits that have already taken place. The request that I use track changes was not made previously. I was extremely annoyed about this, but decided that if that's what they wanted and confirmed that that's what they wanted, then I would do it, but I would do it on my own time. So previously, I would sort of, whatever deadline they would give me, I would always try to meet that deadline. But I would just sort of make sure to make it a priority. Whatever they wanted from me, I would make it a priority. And I decided that due to all the other issues, all the other weird correspondence that I'd received, and just the fact that they didn't tell me that they wanted track changes to be on as I was responding to the edits, I just decided that I would sort of take my time, and it would get in where it fit in. And so here, I have it here, so I'm just going to read it here as well. Before, I worked to make sure I got things back to them before the deadline, and this is the point where I decided that I wouldn't be doing that any longer. It's one of those, a mistake on your part does not mean an emergency on mine situations. If they wanted specific things from me, they'd need to communicate that. So I waited until the next day, December 17th, to send them an email telling them that I couldn't turn on track changes without redoing all of the edits, and asking if that was what they wanted from me, essentially. I waited because I knew that if I wrote the email right away, then it would be very snarky, and probably just borderline unprofessional, and so I just waited until the next day. On December 27th, I got my 5th red flag, and just so you know, everything that I'm about to tell you after December 27th is all a red flag. It's all a part of the same big ass red flag. So on December 27th, 2024, I emailed the blurbs. So I solicited blurbs from 2 professors. One of them said no, just because it was a chapbook, but he did say that the second that I get a novel deal, he will blurb the novel for me. The other professor said absolutely, yes, I will send you a blurb, and I got the blurb and I passed it along on December 27th. I did not hear anything back from them about the blurb, nor did they reach out or reply to my question about whether they wanted me to redo all the edits. And just to clarify, I asked about the edits on December 17th, and I sent them the blurbs on the 27th. So it's been 10 days and I haven't received anything. On January 11th, 2025, I get an email from the editorial assistant, and I'm just going to read this off of my document. They confirm on January 11th that they did want me to redo everything and wonder why I haven't. In an email I haven't received, so they forward this email to me. They tell me that they couldn't combine the documents and that I needed to do it myself, and they set a deadline of January 10th. So this is the email that they're sending me on the 11th, and they're saying the deadline was yesterday, where are the edits? Here's a forwarded email or a forwarded copy of the email that we sent to you, confirming that we wanted you to redo the document and send it to us by the 10th. They also mentioned, this is important, they also mentioned that they attempted to combine the documents. So with Word, there's a function where you can combine 2 documents that are similar, and have it track the changes between the 2 so that you can see what's different about the documents in one single file. They said that they attempted to do that and couldn't do that. It's important. Because immediately after going back and forth with them for a little bit, and telling them I haven't received any correspondence from you, I combined the documents myself. I downloaded Word through my school and downloaded both versions of the document, the version with their edits and then the version with my acceptance/rejection of the edits, combine them. It's very easy. It's like you drop them both in and you click combine and they combine. I don't know why they were having trouble with that. I also wanted to mention that the reason that I didn't combine the documents myself initially was because I didn't know that that was a function that Word has. I primarily use Google Docs as a word processing software, mostly because I have a lot of free Google Drive storage through my undergraduate institution, and so I use Google Docs as word processing software. So because of that, I'm not super well versed in Word, or in the parts of Word that are different from Google Docs. And so I did not know that it had the capability to combine documents that way, or I would have done that as soon as they asked about the track changes and stuff. Then I'm also emailing them, telling them that I have not received your emails. I send them screenshots of the email chain that show that I haven't received any emails. And then I also tell them that I haven't received any response to the blurbs either. And then I also ask that they always respond to my emails and reassert that I've been extremely responsive to them and always return items by whatever deadline they give me. It's raining cats and dogs outside, the thunder's going, the lightning's going, so I hope you can still hear me. We're nearing the end. In response to my request that they respond to my emails, I get another sort of forward of an email that I never received, which was a response to the blurb I sent. I tell Peg I have not been receiving these emails, and here's her response. She effectively is just kind of like, I'm sure you'll get them in the future. I also wanted to come back and say that in this email, I totally forgot about this. In this email, she says that they went to my spam folder. And the way that she phrases this makes it seem like they for sure 100% are in your spam folder. Spoiler, they were not in my spam folder. This is a textbook example of gaslighting, and you will see why I say that when I get, further along in the story, even though, like I said, we're nearly done. But to make a long story short, I knew exactly why I was not getting these emails, and it had nothing to do with my spam folder. And the editorial assistant goes silent after she sort of checked in to be like, why didn't you send us the edits on January 10th? She doesn't say much else. On January 17th, I get an email from the editorial assistant telling me that my chapbook has been pushed back to April. And I'm just going to read this from my document as well. This email is extremely caustic and comes directly on the heels of their communication issues, not my communication issues. This feels like all of this is my fault, even though I've risen to every demand that they have ever had of me. This was also sent by the editorial assistant and not. I respond to this email with one word: received. They say that they'll reach out if they need clarifications about the edits. It is now March 14th as I'm recording this video. I have not heard anything from the press since that last bit of correspondence telling me that the chapbook was being pushed back to April. But I did get an email on February 7th, 2025. That email was a private email sent from the editorial assistant's private email account. She sent it to all 3 emails that they have on file for me. So they have my personal email, they have my business email, and they have my school email. And she sent it to all 3 of them. And this was the editorial assistant exposing. The correspondence that she forwards along to me shows that she has resigned from the press, and it is communicating to the board of the press that was essentially blaming me for the correspondence issues, even though there were other writers who weren't receiving email correspondence from the press, even though the press was sending emails. The editorial assistant also told me that every email that she would send from her press email account was read and edited by Pookie. That's why the email about unsubscribing from the newsletter that I mentioned in the first part of this video, that's why I believe that email was written by Pookie, because it reads and edits all the assistants' emails anyway. This whole thing is just really discouraging. And as I said previously, I know that things could have been a lot worse. I know that this is not as bad as it can be, but it was pretty bad. It was not a fun experience at all. Not fun, but it was a learning experience. So what now? As I said, I haven't heard anything about the edits that I sent to them. I haven't heard anything from specifically about the chapbook being pushed back. I haven't heard anything about artwork. By the way, said that whenever she got a good cover design for the book, she would send it along to me. Haven't heard anything. It's supposed to come out next month. I haven't heard anything about further edits, about readings, about social media promotion. I have heard absolutely nothing. hasn't even reached out to tell me that the editorial assistant that I was working with is no longer at the press. And the thing about this is that since they were having email correspondence issues before, I don't know if they just aren't emailing me because they haven't made any decisions, or if they've been emailing me this entire time and I just haven't been receiving them. I will be completely honest with you, I would rather that they shelve my chapbook than to release it. As I've said before, I am completely disillusioned. I'm completely off it. Feels like it's not even mine anymore. Not because they had me make substantial edits, right? We already talked about that, but just because of the sort of candor of this entire chain of interaction. I don't even want it to be released at this point, and I've already decided that I won't be promoting it at all. I won't be promoting it to my network. I won't be posting online about it. I won't be promoting it to you. Nothing. I have absolutely no pride in this project. The most that I'll do is use the free copies of the chapbook that I get for networking and promotion when I meet people in person. But aside from that, I don't plan on being very connected to this chapbook at all. Bearing all of that in mind, I have just a few pieces of advice for you. If you are approached by a publisher, or a publisher approaches your agent about acquiring your work, I would see if you can connect with any previous writers that have gone through that press or publisher, or that have worked with that specific editor, to see what their experience was like. I would do that before signing a deal. Do it before you sign the deal. Try not to be blinded by an opportunity, or $1,000 or something. Um, Times are hard right now, and I know that um, we're all just trying to survive. We're all just trying to make money to be able to live. But if you can, if you feel like having your work and your art changed in certain ways would be detrimental to you, then I would say really try to vet any opportunity that you get, or any sort of prize that you're given for the opportunity. Know what they expect from you. Ask them the specifics. What kind of files do you want? Do you want track changes on? Ask them if they want track changes on. Make sure that you know and understand what every deliverable is and when those things need to be delivered. So what is the deliverable? What file type? What should it look like? How should I go about it? And then on the day that it's due, is it due that day at noon? Is it due that day at 5 p.m.? Is it due that day at 11:59 p.m.? Ask questions. Know what is expected of you. Edit the contract. Edit the contract. You can edit the contract. If the contract is unfair, edit it. Edit it. Go to your local legal aid society. Go to your local public institution, and talk to the law students there. A lot of public institutions that have law schools will have like a law clinic that's going to be free or very, very low cost. Do a free consultation with a lawyer around you that is experienced in contract law. Talk to people who have experience signing literary contracts, and edit the contract if you feel like the contract is not fair. Don't take it out on the assistant. 9 times out of 10, the editorial assistant is either severely underpaid or not paid at all. A lot of editorial assistant positions are internships, or volunteer positions. So please don't take it out on the editorial assistant. If you have an issue with an edit that's being sent to you, with a method of correspondence, with a tone, contact the person who's getting paid to deal with you and not the editorial assistant. And finally, just stand up for yourself. We have a tendency to be docile when we feel like we are sort of in a privileged position, right? When we are privileged to be in the room with a bigger name, or with someone who wants to give you a little bit of money, someone who believes in you a little bit. We have this tendency to be docile and maybe even overly civil in these situations. But it's important that you stand up for yourself. It's important that you know your worth and you know what you want, and you stick up for that. Because even though the editor may have your best interest at heart, may want the book to come about exactly how you want it to, they can't read your mind. So stand up for yourself. Let your voice be heard in these rooms. I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that this gave you some things to think about. If you're thinking about publishing a chapbook, or if you are querying soon, or anything like that, make sure that you're working with people that you trust and who have your best interests at heart. And as pissed as I am about the situation, I would say that editors and publishers are very busy, right? Agents as well, very, very busy. A lot of work, a lot of working off the clock that they don't get paid for. And so I would say also don't be discouraged if you haven't heard from your editor or your publisher or your agent in a week or so. Just follow up, check in, see how things are going. But one thing that I would not do is ignore all the red flags, and I definitely would not be silent.